following is a presentation of the Belly Up Sports Media Network.
What's up and welcome in, everybody. We're glad to be here tonight. I know we have Dalton Garrett with us once again, and we are here to talk some NCAA baseball. The Super Regionals are upon us, down to 16 teams, and there is some exciting games here, DG, this weekend, man. A wild atmosphere in the regional rounds, a lot of upsets, a lot of offense. It just felt like you said last week, there was some launching pads out there. Balls were just flying all out of the yard. And I believe this is going to be one hell of a weekend for the college baseball scene, brother.
Yeah, man, I agree. Really good teams. Got some good stories this weekend. Last weekend, I feel like it was one of the wilder weekends of regional play we've had in a while. You had some teams that nobody, had really heard of or kept up with in the past, and you had some top seeds that a lot of people picked to get to Omaha go down. You had a lot of top seeds had to fight their way back through losers brackets. Yeah, man. So overall, it has some crazy performances from some individual guys and individual teams. So yeah, I'm excited for this weekend, man. It's gonna be some good ball played all weekend for sure.
Yeah, I can't wait. We actually, tell you a little bit about our weekend. We're actually going to play a little golf Saturday morning, and then we're gonna meet up and do a little cookout, watch a little college baseball, because that's how much we love the sport, right, DG? So, man, let's get over here and let's get right into it. And we're gonna make these picks. We're gonna see how DG feels about who he wants to see move on to the College World Series, and we're down to the nitty gritty, baby. So we are here, and we will start with the Charlottesville Super Regional, DG, and that was Duke. Coming out of there, and they will be traveling to number 7 Virginia. That game 1 will start Friday at 11 a.m. Central Standard Time over on ESPN2. Man, the Virginia Cavaliers, DG, they looked damn near impressive, man. I mean, it was damn near perfect the way they played in their regional round. But who do you like in this super regional matchup?
Yeah, man, this is two teams that I didn't pick to get this far. I had Duke obviously losing in Conway to Coastal Carolina, and I had ECU coming out at Virginia super or regional. Man, like you said, dude, Virginia came out game 1 hitting the baseball. I think they won like 15-0 or 15-1. Then they had a good game. I think like 3-2, 2-1, something like that against ECU in game 2, and then they ended up beating ECU 7-2 in game 3. So I mean, like they just hit all weekend. Their pitching was big. I mean, you only give up 4 or 5 runs in 3 games over the weekend. It's pretty damn impressive. Like I talked about last week, man, they got that guy Kyle Teal, catcher. I think about like in the 400s. I was looking yesterday. He's projected top 10 pick. One of the, I think he's like the best college catcher, draft eligible catcher this year. So people are super high on him. It's funny because I feel like Virginia's typically known for their pitching, man. Like that's what normally when Virginia gets brought up or when they're really good in the past, they got a really, really deep pitching staff. But this year they got a really good pitching staff, but they also got an offense that can score some runs, man.
Yeah.
Duke, on the other hand, I mean Duke can score too. Their pitch is not as great. Last weekend they called their way through that regional in Conway. I know they had some high scoring games, gave up a lot of runs, but they scored enough to win. They had that guy with the torn ACL that had like 4 or 5 home runs last weekend, which, man, you've torn your ACL, so you know the pain that is, man. I can't imagine playing baseball with a torn ACL. I don't know much about the pain of an ACL tear, but I feel like spraining ankles tough to do anything with. And this dude's out here hitting bombs, having a good weekend. So they got him. His name's MJ Metz. They got another guy named Jay Bashier. He's got 17 home runs as well. I think it's going to be a good series. They played earlier in the regular season, obviously being both ACC teams. Duke took the series 2 out of 3, but it was pretty early in the season. ACC, they start conference play much earlier than most of the other conferences, so they got after, I want to say, their second or third weekend of the conference season, where most conferences aren't even starting conference play yet. Virginia was still kind of figuring things out. I think they're definitely rolling right now, man. I think it's going to be a good series. I mean, you got 2 teams that know a lot about each other, 2 teams that can hit. But I think home atmosphere at Virginia, I think pitching-wise, they're deeper there. I think Virginia takes this one. I think Virginia is one of the first teams to advance them all in 3 games.
So you're going 3 games.
Yeah, Virginia in 3.
Yeah, I'm going Virginia as well in 3, like you brought up with Kyle Teal. I know Ethan Anderson, he got hot a little bit there last weekend for Virginia. And like you mentioned in that little breakdown right there, it's usually Virginia in the pitching, and the offense is just kind of a grind it out, mustered as much as you can up late in the innings, try to scrape small ball. But this year it looks like it's a different story for Virginia, and I like Virginia to move on in 3 games at home. It's going to be tough for Duke to repeat what they did earlier in the year. So yeah, man, I like Virginia in this series, and I love the offensive game that they have brought up there to Charlottesville. So let's move on to the Fort Worth Super Regional. Unfortunately, Indiana State did win their regional, but they cannot host a super. I read where they are actually hosting the Special Olympics this weekend, so that forced them to have to move the super regional and have to go to Fort Worth. But Indiana State will get at least 2 home games out of this if it does go to a 3-game series. So TCU will welcome Indiana State with open arms, but Indiana State, being the higher seed, will be the home team in game 1. DG, TCU or Indiana State, man, who do you like in this matchup?
Yeah, man, this is another 2 teams that I did not pick to get this far.
Yeah.
As you see, as we go through this show, you're going to realize I did not have a great week last week picking. But I had TCU losing Arkansas. I mean, I know a lot of people were high on Arkansas. I know you were high on Arkansas. You picked them to win the national championship.
Yeah.
And they fell flat on their faces against TCU in 2 games, man. But I picked, I think, Iowa to come out of Indiana State's regional, which Iowa looked good. They pitched the ball well. They just couldn't score enough runs. Indiana State did enough to win. Man, TCU is, now that Clemson's out of the tournament, probably the hottest team in the country. Like, they've won 9 games in a row. They won their last series. They swept through the Big 12 championship tournament. They swept last week at Arkansas. They beat Arkansas handily both games. They got 4 dudes, man, that are tearing the cover off the ball. They got Braden Taylor, Cole Fontenelle, Carson Bowen, and then the Trey Richardson kid, who are all batting well over 300, all got 45-plus RBIs, man. Trey Richardson went into last weekend with 2 home runs in the season and hit 4 in the weekend, and 2 of them being grand slams. You can't be hotter than that, man. So you got, you got 6 dudes batting over 300. You got guys that are on fire right now. You haven't lost in 3-4 weeks. You're getting a host, which you weren't expecting to get to do. I think that's a massive key here. I think Iowa or Indiana State, I don't know how well the team they are hitting wise. They didn't seem to hit the ball great last week. Like I said, they did. It seemed like they did just enough to score a few runs. Pitching staff's pretty solid. They got 3 dudes that are not bad. We got Lane Miller, who I think is their ace. He threw game 3 last week, which is crazy to me that you save your ace for the last game of the Super Regional or Regional, and you got lucky enough to get there being undefeated. But he only threw 3 innings. He didn't throw terrible, but he didn't throw great. Gave out, I think, 3 runs in 3 innings. I don't know if he was on a pitch count limit or, I don't know enough about them to really speculate. But, again, your ace, you save him for game 3. You only throw him 3 innings. I think you only throw like 45 pitches. So if he's healthy, he should be super fresh for tomorrow for game 1. So I'd assume that's what they're going to roll with game 1. Pitching's really good, man, but, again, not a great overall hitting team. Super unfortunate that, obviously none of us really knew a ton about them before last week. Obviously, they get the host of the 14 overall seed. Again, sucks because apparently for their conference, they host, like the best team in the conference hosts a conference tournament, I guess. So they host the conference tournament, then they host the regional, and then obviously, like I said, they have the Special Olympics, like state championships or whatever, for Indiana next week. So obviously all the hotels are booked up. Crazy weekend. Obviously, a super cool thing. I don't know if you saw on Twitter, TCU has like some page that started up, like a GoFundMe, and they've been sending money to support the Special Olympics of Indiana. So that's obviously super cool. But man, couldn't. TCU is one of those places I feel like they get rowdy. That place is going to be loud. The place is going to be, Texas loves baseball, and now you got a team down there who a month ago wasn't expected to even make the tournament. Now you're 2 games away from Omaha. I think it's going to be a good series. I think both teams are really good. Obviously you're not the 14th seed for no reason. I think TCU's hitting carries them this weekend, man. I got TCU winning in 2 games. I think the home crowd, gives them. I think they can ride that momentum. I think you get a raucous crowd going, get a couple runs on the board early. I think they just kind of ride that momentum, ride that wave they're on, and they take an 11-game win streak in Omaha, man.
I'm with you, DG. I just like you just mentioned. I'm not sure if Indiana State can hit with TCU, and I'm not sure if the pitching for Indiana State is going to be anything. It's not going to overpower TCU. TCU just went up against one of the best rotations in college baseball in the Arkansas Razorbacks, and they manhandled them. All right, just tore the cover off the baseball. So I do think that this TCU team, like you mentioned, is the hottest team in the country right now. We saw what happened to Clemson last week. That was super unfortunate, but obviously it led to an SEC team moving on in that regional. But now it's TCU, and this is a team that went on a run, and they won the Big 12 championship, the tournament, and now they're beating people to sleep. And they walked through that Fayetteville regional like it was cake. And, I didn't get to watch a whole lot of Indiana State, but I did watch them a little bit last week. They're a good club, but I just don't know if they have enough. I don't know if they have enough horses, DG. And, we know what TCU's got in the way they're swinging it right now. So, and don't count out their pitching staff either. Their pitching staff shut down one of the best offenses in the country in the Hogs as well. So I was super high on Arkansas, but I can't look past what TCU did to them and think that Indiana State can get TCU in a 3-game set, especially when this is in Fort Worth. Now, maybe if it was up in Indiana, then that might be a different story. But I like TCU to move on with a sweep in 2 games and go to Omaha, Nebraska out of that super. So let's move on to the Gainesville Super Regional. DG, I know this is one that you've really been licking your chops about, and you've really been wanting this rematch. It's the number 15 ranked South Carolina Gamecocks traveling to Gainesville, the number 2 overall seed Florida Gators. Game 1 will be Friday at 5 p.m. Central Standard Time over on ESPN2. DG, can Florida get sweet revenge from getting swept earlier in the year by South Carolina? Because this is when it matters the most. What are the Gators going to have for them this weekend?
Man, I think it's going to be a heck of a series. I think this is going to be one of the best series for the weekend. I think you got 2 teams. Talent-wise, they're both probably the top, 3 or 4 teams in the country talent-wise. South Carolina, man, it's unfortunate that we pulled them because I think they're better. They're healthy. They weren't healthy. They weren't completely healthy the first time we played them, and they swept us. Obviously, they were super duper hot then. I mean, they were on a scale of 1 to 100, they were probably 90% healthy at the time, 85% healthy at the time. And they, we went down there to Founders Park. Obviously, they had all the momentum in the world, just coming off, big weekend against LSU. Riding high, had beaten Clemson, I want to say, the midweek before they played us. And then we came in, place was rocking. Like I talked about last week, man, we didn't play them bad. We pitched pretty decent. We just couldn't score. Like I said, their lineup's healthy. I know when we played them last time, their Will Sanders, their ace, he shut us down game 1. I remember gave up 2 or 3 runs, pitched really well. And at the time, we were swinging back pretty well. We had just come off the Georgia series. A key, I think a lot of people outside of, maybe Gainesville and South Carolina don't know about this weekend. I think the first time we played them was the week after our closer, Brandon Neely, had been suspended for the whole chanting or, saying let's go to the Georgia Bulldogs dugout. That's a big piece that we were missing. Obviously, we didn't get to the bullpen deep enough with a lead to really need him last weekend or that time. But, that's a confidence I think you can have now. Like, hey, we can get through 6 innings with our starters. We saw last week how well Florida's bullpen looked. So it's gonna be a good weekend. That's another thing I want to talk about, man. Last week, dude, Florida obviously, lost game 2 of the series at Texas Tech, so they had to come fight their way back to the losers bracket. Sunday morning, Hurston Waldrop went 7 innings against Connecticut through a gym. Best he's probably thrown in a long time. Apparently, he was fighting the flu as well, so that's kind of impressive. Then we played Texas Tech again that night. Katie Fisher, true freshman, hadn't started all season, been out of the bullpen, been really good out of the bullpen, but hasn't had to start a game. Comes up, throws 7 innings again, shut down baseball. Probably the best game he's pitched in his entire life. He even said it after the game. And then Monday morning, that's right, we played at noon, so like middle of the day on Monday. Another guy's been in the bullpen all year, Ryan Slater, came in and gave us 5 and 2/3 maybe, and then the bullpen was able to come in and shut it down from there. So the weakness, or what people thought was probably Florida's weakest point, for the majority of the season, was what got us through last weekend. The hitting wasn't great. We struggled. We only scored 3 runs Friday against FAMU, and only scored 3 runs against Texas Tech. So offense was not as good as it's been. Apparently, the wind was blowing dead end all weekend. So I was reading a thing on a Florida message board where they were saying, if the wind wasn't blowing at all, or if it was just slightly blowing out, that Cags would have had 4 or 5 home runs in a 2-game series. Like it seemed like every ball he hit after the first game was just dead center, stroked, but it was just like the wind was catching it and wanted to get out of there. Wyatt Langford went on a tear the last 2 games against Texas Tech. Hit the ball hard all weekend. It just seemed like everything was right at somebody. It was a weird series, man. Like we didn't score, we didn't hit the ball well, but it was like all of a sudden, like Sunday night and Monday morning, it was like the team got hot. It was like everybody started swinging about well. Josh Rivera, I think, went 4 for 4 Monday. BT Rypel was 0 for 14 going into Monday, hit 2 bombs Monday.
Yeah.
Langford hit a home run. I had like a double. Some man with a lineup, dude, that lineup is so scary when they're hitting. And I sent you and D a thing earlier, and Florida's going to throw their regular 1, 2, 3 Sproat tomorrow, Waldrop Saturday, and Cags on Sunday if it gets that far. Apparently the wind's supposed to be blowing out this weekend, which I guess it's fun if you like watching home runs be hit. It's going to be nerve-wracking, obviously, as a Florida fan, because we do give up some home runs. We can hit them, but we give them up as well. So this is going to be a hell of a series, man. To be honest with you, I'm really nervous. I can see us getting swept. I can see us getting beaten 3. I can see us sweeping them. I can see us winning in 3. I think this is maybe one of the most evenly matched up series of the weekend outside of maybe one other one. My heart obviously is telling me Florida. I'm a Florida fan, so it's hard to pick against your team. My brain's kind of leaning South Carolina, man, just because I think they looked so much better than us last week, and everybody thought their regional was going to be much harder than ours with Campbell and NC State. They just came out and just ran through that regional with ease. They won Friday night, I want to say like 19-2. Then they smacked Campbell twice, or beat Campbell once. I think they beat NC State and Campbell, so they beat everybody, and they beat them all handily. They scored runs. They weren't really having to depend on the long ball. They were just base hitting, and then they got big home runs and needed them. So, like I said, man, my brain's telling me South Carolina, my heart's telling me Florida. I picked Florida, obviously, win that championship, being a Florida fan. So, I'm going to ride with my boys, man. I'm going to take the Gators in 3. But would not be shocked, man, if like I said, they could beat us in 2, they could beat us in 3. Wouldn't shock me one way or the other. But, hey, I'm rolling my team, rolling with them all the way to Omaha, rolling with them to win it all. So, hey, give me the Gators in 3, man.
I'm with you. All right. I'm with you, and I think this is the most evenly matched super regional. Just when you look at lineups, when you look at pitching staffs, and when I watched that first series, DG, you guys obviously it was up at Founders, and you guys struggled to throw strikes. You were in every game. It's not like they just went out there and just beat the piss out of you all 3 games, right? You guys had some crucial walks, and that led to big-time South Carolina ABs that just ultimately kind of crippled you in the long run of that series. But I look at this South Carolina, and they're really good. All right. And I know Auburn, we caught them at a time where they were beat up, but like you mentioned, they've gotten healthy. They've got a couple dudes in that lineup that scare me. I know the young freshman kid, what's his name?
Ethan Petrie.
Yeah, Ethan Petrie. I know that they've got the Wimmer kid, and they've got one more in there. My mind's going blank right now. It's like LaCroix or
Yeah, they got some dogs, man.
Yeah, it's something like that. I can't really remember it off the top of my head right now, but they got some dudes that can rake. Here's my thing with this series, DG. It's really, really difficult to repeat what you did earlier in the year, right? And I think there's some bad blood. I think there's a bitter taste in Florida's mouth here. I think Florida got backs up against the wall last week. They got pushed to the limits by Texas Tech, which we know. Texas Tech has been to 7 straight regional finals. That speaks for itself. All right. That's a great baseball program over there. So it's not like you went in and you got beat by some scrubs, So you lost a competitive game to Texas Tech. You come back, you worked your way through the losers bracket, and you scooped them. And your backs got pushed up against the wall, and you come out scratching, clawing, fighting, doing whatever you had to do to make it to a super regional. And now you get a South Carolina team coming down to Gainesville. And I just think that Wyatt Langford and Cags and and what's the BT kid? I know you just said his name just a minute ago.
Yeah, BT Ryanville.
Yeah, and his story of this is it for him. This is his last go. And I just think this Florida team has enough. I think their lineup is a little too talented. And it all comes down to the pitching for Florida, in my opinion, in this series. And I do think it goes to a game 3 with Cags. And you're going to have him step up and have one of his best performances. But like you mentioned a while ago, dude, some of those balls that you guys hit last week, I remember multiple times in our little group message, I would say, damn, well, he just hit it to the deepest part of the field, wind's blowing in, that's so tough. It's so unfortunate. And like you said, preparing for the weather to be blowing out this weekend. So I think if Florida is in their groove, they're hitting it well. I like Florida to take this one in 3 games, go to Omaha. I like the momentum of the Gators right here. And South Carolina, I could see them winning it too. Like you said, heart says Gators, head kind of says South Carolina. I know you're rolling with Florida. And I could see it going either way, evenly matched up. And it's going to be a great series. But I do like Florida to prevail in 3 games. So we will move on to this. This one's a shocker. We'll move on to the Eugene Regional. We kind of highlighted last week Oral Roberts and what they could do. I even tweeted out, I said, hey, Oklahoma State, you're on upset alert, Oral Roberts. I have watched them once or twice this year because Cooper McMurray, our first baseman at Auburn, his brother plays for Oral Roberts. So I knew what they could do in that Stillwater Regional, and they did it. All right, they went into Stillwater and they walked through it. This team can hit, and they're really a Cinderella story. But in the Eugene Super Regional, it's Oral Roberts at Oregon, Game 1, Friday night, 7 p.m. Central Standard Time over on ESPNU. DG, this Oregon team, man, they went into Nashville. Everybody was on Vandy. I was super high on Vandy. I didn't think Oregon would be the team to do it, but they walked in there and they flew through that regional, and they looked damn good doing it. So who do you like out of this Cinderella story and the Oregon Ducks, man?
Yeah, man. Again, 2 teams that I didn't have making this far. I picked DBU to get out of that Oklahoma State regional. And y'all told me, y'all made a big point. I'd seen it everywhere about how good Oral Roberts was, but I didn't do enough research on him, obviously. And then same thing with Oregon, man. Like I told you guys last week, I wasn't very high on Vanderbilt anyways, but I just thought, it's the SEC, it's Vanderbilt. They know how to get done when it matters. They'll prevail, get to the regional. Vanderbilt didn't look good in any of the games they played. They struggled with Eastern Illinois State in the first game. Like, they just, to me, Vanderbilt all season offensively was just either hit or miss. Like, they could be hot one game and then really cold the next. They weren't one of those teams that just carried momentum with the bats. Their pitching was a lot worse than it's been in a long, long time. And Oregon just showed up, and I feel like Oregon pitched their butts off, man. I don't remember exactly what the scores were last week, but I don't feel like they scored a ton of runs. But I know it seemed like they kept people to a few runs each game. Man, I've been listening. I listened to a podcast the other day talking about the regionals this weekend. Man, Oral Roberts is 49-11.
Yeah.
Bro, that's an insane stat for a team to be a 4 seed, and they're 49-11. They have 7 dudes batting over 300. You have 6 guys with 40-plus RBIs. You have a really good bullpen. They got a dude out of the bullpen named Cade Denton I was telling you about earlier. He has a 1.65 ERA, 75 strikeouts to only 9 walks in 54 and 2/3 innings. That's like I think their starters have somewhere like in the 70s and 80 innings pitched. So they rely on this dude a lot. They're a really good team. Oregon's best pitcher, their ace, he's out. The rest of their pitching staff's not great. I think their lowest ERA out of the guys that have started multiple games was like a 4.6. You're not gonna beat a team that scores a lot of runs if you're giving up. Your starters giving up 5 runs basically a game. Oregon's got some dudes that can hit. They got 4 guys with 10-plus home runs. A guy named Drew Cowley got batting 342, 16 bombs with 67 RBIs. So they got some guys. It's in Oregon. I don't know how much of an effect that makes on this series. I don't know, if Oregon has a crazy crowd for baseball. Obviously, we know they got football. They can pack out a football stadium. I would assume they could probably pack out a baseball stadium. A funny thing I heard the other day, man, was talking about Oral Roberts. Oral Roberts is a 4 seed only because of the conference they're in, right? Yeah. I think it was on the 11.7 podcast. One of the guys on there was talking about it, and they were saying, man, Oral Roberts, like for the people who don't keep up with baseball, Oral Roberts would be like, let's think about Gonzaga in basketball. Obviously, we know, Gonzaga's, a 1 seed every year. Well, let's just imagine that Gonzaga didn't get to be they based it strictly on, hey, their conference is not very good. We're going to give them – they're going to be a 12 seed because their conference isn't really good. Well, Gonzaga's going to run through a tournament as a 12 seed every time, right? Oral Roberts is basically in the same boat. They're a really good team who just plays in a really weak conference. And the way college baseball works, obviously with RPIs and stuff like that, like you can only play who's in front of you. Obviously, basketball's a little different. You can schedule out of conference and play in tournaments and, build your strength of schedule and all that good stuff. Baseball, man, schedules are set. Like, you got your 25, 30 conference games that don't change. And, how many tournaments is Oral Roberts getting invited to? You know what I'm saying? Like, they're not getting invited to the Minute Maid Classic or the, Arlington Globe Life Classic. They don't get invited to that stuff, man. So you're not getting opportunities to play these big teams. So they're just beating the hell out of the people in front of them. They showed up last week in a tough super regional. Or regional. Yes, Oklahoma State could hit, Washington could hit, DBU could hit, and these dudes prevailed. They came out of it. I don't think there's been a 4 seed make it to Omaha since like 2011 when it was Stony Brook. I think we make it 2023. I got Oral Roberts in 3, man.
That is my pick also. I have Oral Roberts in 3. Shout out to Jake McMurray, Coop's brother. I want Oral Roberts for that, but I also think, like you said, their offense, man, is just absolutely deadly. I know you mentioned the player of the year for them and that guy that can just absolutely stroke. He's a dude for Oral Roberts and their lineup, man. They're hitting over 300. They can pitch a little bit. I think their pitching's better than Oregon. I don't care if it's at Oregon. I don't believe in the Pac-12 in baseball, in football, in basketball, nothing. And I just think Oral Roberts is freaking hot right now, DG. So give me Oral Roberts in 3 games. I like them to move on to Omaha, Nebraska. And the Cinderella story continues. The little engine that could, the Oral Roberts team that has just like you said, run through everybody, man. 49-11. That is insane. What a year for those guys over there. So we will move over to the Winston-Salem Super Regional. DG, this is one right here, man. I think this is going to be a good one. You got number 16, Alabama at number 1, Wake Forest. Game 1 Saturday, 11 a.m. Central Standard Time over on ESPN. DG, I was a little let down on how Alabama played last week, hosting their regional. They were an errant throw away from the Troy upset right there in the ninth inning. Ultimately, the ball did get away. They come around to win. They took care of Boston College in the regional final, but they struggled with Nichols a little bit. They struggled with Troy, like I just said, and it just wasn't the Alabama I was used to seeing, right? And I think the thing that Alabama can kind of lean on this weekend is their pitching. Luke Holman, Garrett McMillan, and the other kid. I forget the third kid's name, but I know they lost Grayson Hitt. That was a big miss, but their offense just didn't live up to what it had done all year last weekend. Excuse me. And that kind of scares me going into this weekend because I look at Wake Forest and the dudes that they have and the way they can hit the baseball and their pitching staff. And if Alabama plays like they did this past weekend, I think they could run into a buzzsaw here. Now, I think it's going to be a great series. I don't expect, the Alabama lineup to go ice cold like it did earlier in that Tuscaloosa regional. But this Wake Forest pitching staff is filthy, dude. And I think this team is on track to go into Omaha and just really cause damage, man. Just wreck people's seasons, just put their season to end, put it to sleep. And man, I'm just kind of torn because I want to say Alabama gets a game and forces it to a game 3, but I'm going to go Wake Forest with a sweep. I think it's going to be super, super competitive up there in Winston-Salem. But the way Alabama swung the bats last weekend, I cannot sit here and put my faith in them to go on the road at Wake Forest and somehow find a way to upset this team. So give me Wake Forest in a sweep, 2 games to Omaha.
Yeah, man. Like I said earlier, I think the Florida South Carolina series is gonna be really good. I think this is the second best, maybe even the first best Super of the weekend. Like you said, Alabama's pitching staff's deep, but it's not as deep as Wake Forest, man. Mm-hmm. I was looking at their stats, bro. They got 4 guys. All of them have a sub 3 ERA. Their ace, Rhett Lauder, has a sub 2 ERA. They all have 85+ strikeouts. 3 of them have 100+ strikeouts. And none of them have walked more than 20 people all season.
Wow.
Yeah. That's elite. Like,
yeah.
You don't see that in college baseball, especially not nowadays, man. Like, they're in the ACC. It's not like they're playing a bunch of bums. Like, you're in a tough conference. They ran through the ACC for the majority of the year. They've ran through everybody. I mean, dude, last weekend, you played Maryland, who had just come off winning the Big Ten championship, had the only guy in college baseball, I think, that gets 100 RBIs, the Nick Lodolo guy or whatever. Like, you played a really good team. I was looking at their scores. I think Wake Forest outscored their opponents last weekend 48-7. And 6 of the runs for the other team were scored in 1 game, and it was when they won 21-6. So they're a good team, man. But like you said, Alabama's a really, really, really good 16 seed. If I'm Wake Forest, I'm honestly pissed off that they're the 16 seed. Like I was looking at the thing earlier, and it was on. I don't remember if it was on 24/7 or CBS, but these are 4 the stats they compared. Runs per game, Wake has 9.3, Alabama has 7.7. ERA, Wake 2.78, Bama 3.96. Defensively, they're exactly the same at .979. And then strength of schedule, Wake Forest has 35, Bama was a 13. You got 2 evenly matched teams, man. Like, 9 runs a game, 8 runs a game, and you're giving up 3 and 4 runs a game, like that's really good, man. But I think Wake Forest, man, I think they've been the hot team all year. I feel like they haven't cooled off once. There hasn't been a stretch where it's like, oh man, Wake Forest kind of fell off, Like we've had that with literally everybody else in the top 5. LSU kind of got cold towards the end of the season. Florida kind of slumped there in the middle of the season. Obviously, South Carolina fell off. That hasn't happened yet with Wake Forest, man. They went in last week. They did exactly what the number 1 overall seed should do. I've been seeing a lot of people say that this weekend kind of gives them the Tennessee versus Notre Dame vibes from last year, where Tennessee was the predominant favorite to win everything. Like nobody should beat them. I feel like that's how a lot of people are kind of looking at Wake Forest. But like you said, man, Alabama's bats did not show up last week. How can you expect that to change this weekend when you're going up against exponentially better pitching? Yeah, you play the SEC, this, that, and the other, but you got shut down by the best dudes in the SEC, right?
Yep.
Skeens shut them down. I know us, Brandon Sproat, one hit them in complete game, first game in the SEC. Hurston Waldrop, I think they beat Waldrop. Cags shut them down, and that was before Cags really got rolling. I know, they didn't hit the better pitchers in their conference all season. They can score, yeah, and they can hit. They got several dudes that hit bomb, and they got a freshman with 22 home runs. Mm-hmm. But this is one where I think home field advantage is going to play a big role. Wake Forest is a team I just feel like every time you see a video of them on Twitter, there's somebody hitting 700 feet. So give me the Demon Deacons, man. But I'm going to go 3 games. I think Alabama can steal one. This is one of those ones I'm in between. Wake could sweep them and make it look easy. Wake can win it in 3. Alabama can win it in 3. I don't see any scenario where Alabama could win it in 2. I just don't know that they're not beating Wake Forest's dogs on the mound back-to-back nights. But give me Wake Forest in 3. I think that'd be like the first number 1 overall seed to get to Omaha in a couple of years, I feel like. So I think they kind of break that curse. They get there, and then we'll see what they do once they get there.
Yeah, I'm with you, DG. It kind of let me down a little bit with Alabama last weekend with the bats, and even in that Boston College, that regional final, they didn't really hit the ball that great. BC just kept walking folks, man, and I guess that's how it goes sometimes. Like we always say, baseball's a weird game. It's funny. Sometimes the bats go cold, and I know that from being an Auburn fan. So, yeah, tough weekend. But let's go on over to the Baton Rouge Super Regional. Number 12 overall seed, the Kentucky Wildcats, traveling down to Baton Rouge to take on the number 5 seed LSU Tigers. Game 1 Saturday at 2 p.m. Central Standard Time over on ESPN. DG, I know these cats, no pun intended, but they played earlier in the year, and I believe LSU won that series. So Kentucky having to travel to Baton Rouge. We know Paul Skeens, everything he's about. The LSU pitching staff actually showed up last weekend. Good for them. This was a staff that had struggled down the back end of the season, and guys like Thatcher Hurd and I know the Guidry kid out of the bullpen, he was electric when he come into the game the other night. So, what do you think about this series? Can Kentucky hit with LSU? Can they score enough runs? Can their pitching hold this LSU lineup down?
Yeah, man, this is another one I think super interesting. You got another, I think it's out of the 8 super regionals, you got 3 series that are like repeat series, right? You got Florida, South Carolina as repeat series, Virginia, Duke, and then this is another one as well. Man, I literally wrote on my paper, it says LSU versus Kentucky. I wrote Skeens, Cruz, White, Morgan, Guidry, Dugas. Like, and that's not even naming all of them, right? I just wrote dogs. Like that's what they got. Like they just got guys, man. Like you got, I don't know if people keep up with it, but Golden Spikes Award is like basically the Heisman Trophy of college baseball.
Yeah.
2 of the 3 finalists are LSU players, right? It's Skeens, Paul Skeens, Bill Cruz, and then Jack Caglione. Like right there shows you how much better the SEC is compared to everybody else. When you got the 3 best players in the country are all in the same conference, all compete for the same thing. A lot of people got these guys the presumptive 1-2 pick in the draft. They're saying Skeens is the best pitching prospect since Strasburg. Cruz is one of the best college hitters since Benintendi or Bregman of that class. Man, it's like it's so hard to look past this team because I was reading something earlier, man. It's like they kind of felt, like I said earlier, they kind of had that little stretch where it's like, whoa, man, LSU is beatable. They're not going to, maybe they're not going to run the table and just beat the hell out of everybody every week, but they got that swagger back. Last weekend, they had some games where they didn't just, they had to score, they had to pitch well, and they did both. Baton Rouge, we know, is going to be on fire. They've been tailgating since last Saturday. Some of them people took off all week of work, never left. They've been there all week. Place is going to be electric. Kentucky, I think, got lucky not having to play a night game for game one. You get Skeens at 2 o'clock in the middle of the day. It's going to be electric anyways, but, man, if you gave them Cajuns till 8 o'clock to get drunk and ready to rock and roll, it would have been even more electric. Like you said, I think Kentucky's got a good chance. I think Kentucky's a scrappy team. I know when we played them, they were kind of the same way. The first time they played LSU, they did not throw their number one guy game one. They kind of won a bullpen game. It was almost like they conceded game one. Hey, you got Skeens. We're not beating him. We're going to see what we can do with our best against your 2-3 guys. I think LSU scored 5-6 runs in the first inning. Kentucky's the only team to really get to Skeens all season. They scored 5 runs on him. Now, I say that really lightly. I think he went 7 innings, but LSU was never in any serious chance of losing. It was, 12-1, 12-4, 13-5. Like, he was just throwing strikes. They were hitting the ball well. Like, when you got a 12-run lead, you're not really trying to strike everybody out anymore. I wrote pitching depth could be a problem for LSU, like you said. It's been a problem all season. They win Saturday, it makes it a lot easier on them because I think then you can just kind of piece it together. The lineup is going to produce. So I think Skeens wins game one. The lineup does what it does. Been doing all season. Like you said, I saw a thing on that Mikey Mato guy's podcast. He was talking to Jay Johnson and asked him, about Gavin Guidry. And Jay Johnson said Gavin Guidry poked his head in the door and was like, "Hey, coach, I don't care what you're calling. I'm striking them all out." Like, the dude's kind of, he's kind of turned up right now. And the dude's a freshman. So, he's kind of – they got a dog in the bullpen now they can depend on. I wrote down LSU in 3, but now the more I've talked about it, I don't know that this series is relatively close. I think LSU's going to ride the momentum, and I think LSU wins this one too.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think this is a clean sweep for LSU. I think it's in 2 in Baton Rouge. And maybe if this thing was in Lexington, I might give Kentucky a game. But I just don't know if Kentucky can hit with LSU. Tommy White and Dylan Cruz and all those guys. Dylan Cruz has gotten back on track. I know he hit a little slump towards the end of the year when he played us. I think he went like 2 for 13 in our series. So he's back on track. This lineup seems to be rolling. Skeens wins at 2 o'clock on Saturday. I agree with what you said that Kentucky did luck out and not get a 7, 8 o'clock game in Baton Rouge because we know the box will be rocking. So I do like LSU in this matchup. I think they're a little too deep for Kentucky, and I think it's a clean sweep. So let's move over to the Hattiesburg Super Regional. Now, DG, all right, let's talk about this one. Tennessee at Southern Miss, game 1 Saturday, 2 o'clock Central Standard Time over on ESPNU. Man, this one's got some heat behind it right now because Tennessee felt like they should host a Super Regional. Southern Miss felt like they should have hosted a regional, all right, and they didn't. They got sent to Auburn, ended up losing to Samford their first game, come back, fight their way all the way through the losers bracket, 2-scoop pin. And now they get to host a Super Regional, but Tennessee went up to Clemson, handled business, beat Clemson in extra innings, did what they had to do to win that regional. So now Tennessee, hot as a firecracker, started out 5-10 in the SEC in the first half, got absolutely just took off in the second half, and they're really playing with that swagger that they were playing with last year. So, man, 2 hot teams, 2 pitching staffs that are really fun to watch. Both teams have dudes. Tanner Hall, dude pitched first game in the Auburn Regional against Sanford, threw 123 pitches, come out in the last game, the game 7 against Penn, threw 40 something more. The dude's an absolute stud. And then we know the dudes that Tennessee got, Dolander, and we could keep going, and the Sticks and everything they got. So, man, this is just a freaking firecracker of a series, and I'm excited for it.
Yeah, man, for sure. Like you said, both teams kind of felt, they should be hosting the Super Regional. I think the committee got right giving it to Southern. I think Southern was, at the end of the season, the better team. I think Southern I agreed that they should have hosted a Super. There's a few teams. Obviously, I didn't know much about Indiana State, but, I thought Southern should host it over them. I know you're not going to like this. I thought they should have hosted over you guys. But, again, it came down to almost like a conference thing. Hey, you know what? Auburn got hot in the SEC. Southern won in the Sun Belt. Like, which one holds more weight? And like you said, man, I didn't pick Tennessee to win, but we all knew, like, they could easily go up there and do what they did. That game against Clemson was maybe one of the best games I've seen in a long time.
Yes.
I think went 14 or 15 innings. They were on the ropes. They had Chase Burns walk the bases loaded. They kept him in. He got a ground ball a second, a bang play at first. Ended up having a review. They called him safe originally. Clemson thinks they walk it off. They go back and review it, and dude was out by like a shoelace or a spike on his cleat. So then you go to extras, and then later on in the game, Clemson's got their dog center fielder Cam Camilera or something like that. Was like the freshman ACC Player of the Year. He's running off the field, jaw jacking with Drew Benson or whatever from Tennessee, and the ump shows up again, man, and tosses this kid out of the game. Changed the whole momentum. The dude was 4 for 6 with a home run and 2 doubles as the leadoff guy. I'm not saying that's why they lost the game, but when you lose one of your dogs in the middle of a battle, like that's tough. He gets tossed, and I know there's a whole controversy about that. Kyle Peterson was basically calling out umpires on national television during the game, and people were on his neck about it, and he was just firing off tweets to people on Twitter. I think it is ridiculous, man. Like we've talked about in the past, how the umpires, like you want to grow, they're talking about growing the game. Like, hey, let these kids show emotion. And it's like, I don't care if this man, unless this dude's face-to-face, nose-to-nose, dog cussing this kid, man, hey, it's baseball. It's a 15-inning game, with your season on the line. Like, we're playing for something special here. And you throw a kid out for something like that. Everybody's like, oh, they had already worn both benches. Like, again, unless it was something just out of this world egregious, the Benson kid didn't even stop to talk. They literally, like, cross pass, probably both cussed at each other. Center fielder for Clemson probably says something a little bit louder, and he gets tossed. Not only did he toss the rest of that game, he can't play. He's suspended for a game on Sunday, which they ultimately get beat by Charlotte. Tennessee obviously wins the Super in 3 or regional in 3 games. Man, it's funny you said it. I literally wrote Tennessee versus Southern Miss, first line. Tennessee has their swagger back. I don't think this lineup is that good overall as a team. You got Blake Berg, you got the Merritt kid, you got Maui Ahuna, you got Cameron Moore, you got some guys, but they're not Drew Gilbert. They're not the guys from last year. They can hit when they want to hit, but it's not been like it was last year. Where it was like every game you were getting something out of Drew Gilbert. This year it's like, hey, somebody might show up, somebody might not show up.
Yeah.
I'm curious to see what they do with their pitching. I wrote deep on the mound. When you got Chase Burns coming out of the bullpen, giving you 7 innings, that's elite stuff. Which he's a starter. But he struggled. They bumped him in the pen. He's just been elite since he's got down there. I was looking at 2024 mock drafts or just kind of prospect thing the other day, just because I was curious. Because obviously, in my opinion, Cags is the surefire number 1 pick for next year, and on the draft board he is. And they had Chase Burns as the number 1 college pitcher or number 2 guy. So you got a dog. You got him. You got Chase Dolander. You got Andrew Beam. You got the kid. I can't remember his name, but he threw game 1. Andrew Wright, maybe. He threw game 1 last week. He was a transfer from Charlotte. Shut them down. Went with 7 innings, like 12 strikeouts. So I'm curious to see what they do starting wise. Like who goes game 1? Because it's almost like you got Chase Burns. It's like, do you take a chance of him not even ever getting in the game because you don't need him, or it gets out of hand before you get to him. So I'm really curious to see what they do there. Atmosphere is going to be insane. Southern Miss people were almost they're like the little brother when it comes to, like, in my opinion, they're like the little brother of LSU. Like, right? We know LSU's going to be rocking. Southern Miss is gonna be bumping too. That's all. That ain't nothing to do with Hattiesburg but watch baseball. It's gonna be rocking. Biggest question mark though for me, man, is after Tanner Hall, what do you got? If you can't win Tanner Hall's game, what do you do? Yeah, we saw it last week. You come back through and you win a regional that wasn't strong. Right?
Yeah.
Auburn forgot they had games and they just didn't show up at all. Sanford wasn't great after one game. Penn was a flash in the pan. I feel like they got hot and played decent for a couple games, but this ain't Penn, this ain't Sanford, this is Tennessee. You know what you're getting from Tennessee, when they're playing well. So to me, it's almost game one. Obviously, to me, is a must win for Southern. We saw what they did last week lineup wise against Sanford. If you can't score with one run against Sanford and Tanner Hall's got to go 9 innings and you still can't win the game, what the hell do you think you're going to do against top level SEC arms? I think it's going to be a good series. I think it's going to be rocking all weekend. I just don't see any chance in hell that Southern Miss wins this series. I think Tennessee, even though it's a lot of new guys in the lineup, I think they're out for blood. So I got Tennessee in 2. I think Tennessee's back in Omaha. I think Tennessee's in Omaha where they believe they should have been last year. And I think they're rolling, man. I think they're there. I think they're a scary team. I thank God they're on the opposite side of the bracket from us. If we do get there, we wouldn't have to see them to the national championship. So
I'm right there with you, DG. I completely agree. And look, that Tennessee team was down to their final out in that Clemson game when the Denton kid, the transfer from Alabama, hit the blast down the left field line to put them right back in it to tie that thing up and go into extra innings. So this Tennessee team, like you said, has gotten their swagger back, and I think they're one of the hottest teams in the country. And I'm with you, man. I think that Tanner Hall game is a must-win for Southern Miss, but how much does Tanner Hall have left in the tank, DG? He just threw 160 pitches last weekend. And I know Ben Upton over on 11.7 said, well, he doesn't throw with a lot of velocity and 160 pitches. He pitched on a Friday and come back and pitched on a Monday. And he threw 160 pitches in that time span. So what does he have left in the tank? I think it's a must-win game for Southern Miss. And I think if you lose that game, your ass is getting swept because I think Tennessee is that good right now. I think they are hot, and I'm with you. I think Tennessee wins this series in 2 games. Southern Miss back-to-back super appearances. I know last year, I'm pretty sure they faced Ole Miss in the supers last year, right? And Ole Miss got off in them. So I think Tennessee is going to do the same. Hard for me to pick against an SEC team, bro. I can't do it. I think Tennessee, I think their lineup is just a little bit better than Southern Miss. Southern Miss, even when they beat us, man, the Christopher Sargent, he hit a fly ball down the right field line. Like, it wasn't hit hard. It just carried out of right field. The ball was just absolutely jumping out of Auburn this past weekend. And it was like a routine fly ball. And Bobby Pierce just said, man, it kept drifting back. And it just went out. It wasn't anything that would pop off the bat. But they didn't hit great against us. Their shortstop hit 2 home runs against us. Christopher Sargent hit the 3-run bomb. And it's not like they just string a bunch of hits together,
Yeah.
And that is what scares me because I watched them play Sanford. They didn't hit that great against Sanford. So that is what scares me is can their lineup from top to bottom string enough hits together against this Tennessee pitching staff to win that Tanner Hall game, and I just don't think they can. So I like Tennessee.
And it's crazy that you said it, brought up the fact they played Ole Miss last year in Supers. Obviously, Ole Miss was, barely getting in the tournament last year, but in Tennessee, Tennessee clearly made the tournament. There was never a point they were out. But think back last year, man. Ole Miss was the number 1 team in the country for a couple weeks, and it just kind of fell off. And then obviously got hot at the right time. Tennessee, early in the preseason number 2, number 3, kind of ranked for a while. Once SEC play got going, they started off 5-10, like you said, and since then they've kind of gone on a little tear. I mean, obviously, they didn't win the SEC. I think they ended up going like 17-14 in the SEC, which they went. So you're telling me they win 12 out of the last 16 games in the SEC. You go to Clemson, you beat one of the hottest teams in the country. So it's just, man, like there's just not a scenario in my head that I can imagine Southern Miss winning this series. If it does, if it happens, it happens. But Tennessee just seems, like I said, man, they got it back. They got what they missed all season. They got it back. I know last week, I don't remember what it was. I want to say it was when Burns got out of that bases loaded jam. Obviously, I mean, got ground ball, great play by the second baseman. Man, Vitello was out past over the third base line, like chest bumping people. I mean, he was running like, and that, like, I know a lot of people don't like that, man, but like I love it, bro. Like as a coach, like I know obviously I'm not coaching that high of a level, but like, man, like when you got a coach like that fires you up, man. I was the same way with some of my guys. Yeah, it was 13 and 14-year-olds, bro. But like when they have a coach that they know believes in them, like when they make a good play and you're like, man, let's go, baby. Like you want to run through a wall for that person, bro. Yep. Like I don't even like Tennessee, and it was like, man, hell yeah. Like there ain't no way they're losing this game now. And it's almost like when the coach got that swagger and believes in you, like it's just like, man, you're not gonna lose. Like we're running through a brick wall for this dude because he'd do the same for us. So like I said, it would shock me if Tennessee sweeps and Tennessee rolls, into Omaha as one of the hottest teams in the country.
Yeah, 100%, DG. Let's move over our last super regional. The Stanford Cardinal, man, coming back and scooping the Texas A&M Aggies the other night. Stanford Super Regional is Texas at number 8 Stanford. Game 1 Saturday, 5 p.m. Central Standard Time over on ESPN2. Texas, also a team that, we didn't really believe in, but they did quick work, and they look really impressive. They got to go to Stanford. Stanford, having to come back and two-scoop Texas A&M. They hit. Texas A&M didn't. Texas A&M couldn't field the ball. They couldn't catch a pop-up on the infield. It was horrendous. Stanford was playing small ball and hitting the long ball. Their game really come together. Their number one guy come back in that Game 7 game and just absolutely shoved against Texas A&M. It was really impressive stuff. But who do you have in this last one, DG? Texas or Stanford?
Yeah, man. This is a series that, again, like I said previously, I wasn't expecting this one either. Texas shocked me, man. Stanford, I knew Stanford was good, but I just thought Texas A&M was kind of one of those teams that seemed like they had caught fire, which they looked fantastic through the first 2 games, and it was just like they forgot how to play baseball. Texas went down to Coral Gables, and their pitching showed up, man. Texas's first 2 guys, you got Lucas Gordon and LeBaron Johnson, both sub-3 ERAs, 2.45 for one and 2.62 for the other. That's electric stuff. Their lineup's not as deep, and I say that lightly because they're all, I think, out of their starting 9, everybody.
Well, we have had some technical issues with DG. We will try to get him back in here. Let's see if we can get him back. He looks to be lost, but I will pick up here and I will make what I think DG's pick will be. I think DG was going to go with Texas just by the way he was talking about. I don't know. I'll get with him. I'll ask him. But me, I'm going to go Texas in this super regional in 3 games. I think Texas pulls it off like DG was mentioning. Their starting pitching, if they do pitch the way that they did down in Coral Gables last weekend, and they can somehow manufacture some runs. I know the Stanford lineup, watching them against Texas A&M, they had to really get the small ball game going, and then the bombs come later in the game, but they still bags. Stanford was taking bags the other night. Their ace stud was really good, and in a lot of lefty on lefty matchups against A&M. So, but me personally, I like the Longhorns. I think Texas gets back to the College World Series where they belong in 3 games, upsetting Stanford. It really all goes against me believing in the Pac-12. Again, I don't think they are a serious athletic conference right now in this day and age. And with UCLA and USC headed to the Big Ten for most likely, and this will be this coming up year will be the last year you see that. So I just think the Pac-12 is an absolute disaster. So with that being said, we have picked our super regional winners. This is who we think will be dancing in Omaha. And we really appreciate each and every one of you for joining us today. We thank you for all the support. If you could, go like the podcast, subscribe on YouTube, go to Apple Podcasts, rate us, whatever you got to do. We greatly appreciate it. Check out the link tree. Check out that link and go to our merch store. See if you like anything. If you want something made, just hit us up, holler at us, and we will certainly get it done. But like always, I appreciate each and every one of you, like I said, and I will leave you with a War Damn Eagle. We will catch you on the next one. We're out.